we are here with Sanchez and his human, Christian Benner. Christian is a good friend of mine. We have connected on Instagram and become real life friends. We always talk about bootlegs and Japanese pressings and different audiophile equipment and stuff like that. So we've known each other for probably about a year or something, right? And just thought I'd come up to New York City and meet him in person and talk to you about records, man. So tell everyone what you do, a little bit about what you do. What's this place?
The number one question. I make custom leather jackets. It's hard to put a title on it. A lot of people ask me what I do, and I hate titles for things. Artist, designer. I guess if you really have to put a title on, it's an artist. I create things for people. The fashion world it's such a ever so changing world.
Yeah.
It works in 6-month cycles for seasons. So, in the design world, people are working a year in advance.
Wow.
I can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm working day by day, creating pieces for now. So I would consider it. I'm an artist that takes jackets and transforms them into one-of-a-kind pieces.
Yeah, they're incredible. So you've made some jackets for some rock stars. Who are your favorites? I know some of my favorites that you've done it for, but who are some of your favorites that you've done jackets for?
I'll start with the non-obvious. Probably. Gosh, I think the coolest one was Bruno Mars.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was.
I don't know if I knew that.
That was a couple years ago. I got a call from his team, and they said, "Hey, we're doing the Super Bowl in a month. We want to do a punk rock theme."
Wow.
It's like, wow, okay. And I barely know anything about Bruno Mars, so I just kind of. My big thing is when I work with customers, especially musicians, I study them. I kind of just see how they move, how they work, what they wear, their style. I don't even necessarily listen to their music. I just study them as humans.
He can shred.
That dude is.
He can play
he's
guitar.
Something else, man. He's one of those. I mean, I almost could compare him to like a Prince.
Yeah.
And,
you've seen him be Prince and like dress up like Prince. And
yeah.
He's amazing.
It's really cool learning about people. Kind of backtrack a little bit. I started doing this to learn about people. It's kind of like almost getting a tattoo when it's working with me. I sit down. I won't work with anyone I don't speak with. I have to speak to the person. And there's been a few instances where some of the ego's gotten away and they won't get on the phone. Gaga, she's been the best. She's probably one of my favorites as well. She's just so open in a sense, what I mean? I've known her prior to when I used to work at a bar in the Lower East Side, this little rock and roll bar, and we had 80s hair metal night, fog machine, and we used to all dress up with the big hair, and she was actually a go-go dancer before she became Lady Gaga.
She was Lady Gaga.
She's Lady Gaga. And it's kind of cool that she came back and said, like, it's amazing what you're doing, and like as if she's not even doing anything. She was like praising me, and I was like, ooh. And to be able to create with her, and she said, listen, like this is kind of what I'm going for, create. And I would just create. And that was actually like 6 months of me starting this whole thing, and it was before I had a shop. I worked out of a really tiny little basement, and my bedroom was like, gosh, it was like the size of a walk-in closet. And it was me, my dog Sanchez, painting on my bed. I had a jacket literally on my bed painting, and the idea I was going to do all polka dots. Black jacket, white polka dots. So she showed me this inspiration photo of an old Malcolm McLaren who, Malcolm McLaren was behind the Sex Pistols. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to recreate something similar. And dog, jacket, ashtray, coffee, and music playing. And I was hand-drawing these circles, and I got probably an hour into it. And I went to reach for the ashtray, knocked over the paint right on the jacket everywhere. And it was like one of those moments where you're just like, it wasn't real. Like slow motion. And I went outside and just sat there for like 10 minutes. Like, you know, I had no money at the time. I was literally just starting. And like I spent all of my money. I can get back to that in a minute. But I was collecting unemployment when I started this whole thing. And I spent the money on the jacket, on the materials. So I sat there and just kind of looked at her and said, you know what? Painted the whole jacket white, started over, and did black circles. It turned out to be one of the most photographed jackets that I've ever made. I mean, it was like, it just popped up everywhere, almost to the point where it was like haunting me. Like, I mean, and all these crazy tabloid photos, and, you know, probably the most requested jacket from other people. Like, can you make that jacket again?
She loved it, right?
She wore it everywhere.
Wow, that's awesome. Some of my favorites that you've done for is Axl Rose, Steven Tyler. I'm trying to remember who else. I mean, Slash. There's Slash's guitars up here.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. I grew up just loving Slash, wanting to be Slash.
Such good dudes too.
Oh well, I wouldn't know, but you do.
Really good guys. You
Yeah.
know, it's just it's surreal working with my heroes, you know, working with people I grew up with, establishing friendships, you know, and that's just why it goes back to, you know, like how we even started. You know, I said, you know, give me a call. You know, I come from I think one of the last generations that was actually a real generation of the 90s. And, you know, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. Like, we had to talk to each other. And I'm a firm believer in communication with people. You know, when I moved to New York in my 20s, I was working corporate fashion. And, you know, I had a fashion degree, this, that, and the other thing. And I just thought I was supposed to do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And get a job and benefits and this, that. And this industry in New York City is ruthless. These people are just horrible humans. And I either would get fired or quit. And I must have went through like 8 jobs in different fashion companies. And I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And probably my late 20s, probably around 27-ish, I got a job with Victoria's Secret as one of their visual directors. So I did all the display work for all the New York stores. And I mean, gosh, my first day when I got in there, they just looked at me and they're like, you have to cut your hair, you have to wear all black. Here's a list of vocabulary words that you need to use when speaking with other employees. I was just like, oh my gosh, is this real? Like, yeah. I have to change who I am as a human to work for this company. It's cutthroat, you know, and you're replaceable. That's how they look at it. Gosh, probably about 3 years in the Victoria's Secret, it like affected me mentally and physically. I mean, I'd walk down the street and I was bitter. I eventually turned back to that bar that I was talking about where Gaga worked, and it kind of became my escape. You know, it was one of those places where you walk in and you're just like, I'm home.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of, you know, misfits and individual people and people that just, you know, wanted to be themselves, all listening to rock and roll and enjoying themselves and partying. And I was introduced to cocaine. And it was literally like Popeye eating a can of spinach. And I was a lightweight, you know. Addiction runs in my family. You know, I know we've spoken about this, but I have a huge addictive personality. I mean, hence my record collection and everything else. It's, you know, it'll be something. So cocaine was introduced and I said, this is amazing. Meaning it turned me into something else. It allowed me to escape who I was every day. It allowed me to escape that corporate guy. And for 12 hours a night, I was something else. I was whoever you wanted me to be. You know, like hey, are you in Metallica? Yes, yeah, I'm the lead singer of Metallica. Like, I just pick anything but who I was, you know. And probably for like 3 years, I just went on this binge, you know. But I was able to maintain this job. I had, you know, this huge corporate job, but all I cared about was my 2 days off. And from the second I was off to the second I had to go back, I was partying, and I was high on cocaine. And one day, when I turned 30, 30 was a big one for me. And I woke up, and I kind of just had a breakdown. You know, I'm 30 years old, and I'm living in this basement. I hate my life. I hate the direction. I have no, aspirations. I just don't care about anything anymore. And a big kicker was to me. I mean, I don't know necessarily. I'm sure it's common everywhere, but especially in New York City. You know, you go to these bars and you see these older guys hitting on these young girls, and I was just like, I don't want to turn into this dude, this creepy older dude, like hopped up on drugs, and so I need to figure something out. So it took a little time, but I got sober, and I started to discover a whole nother side of life. I started to discover a part of me that I never knew I had. Mainly being more outspoken, mainly learning and, not judging a book by its cover. I did the AA thing for a little bit, and that's what really opened the door. I mean, gosh, people sitting in AA rooms are just, from, I don't know, a homeless guy to one of my favorite musicians. New York City AA rooms are like the coolest places to be.
We should be doing podcasts.
You know what I mean? It's just like, I look at it. People in AA are the coolest people because those were the partiers. Those are the people that knew how to throw down. So I just started meeting these incredible people and just hearing their stories, and it taught me to be open about what I was going through. So I did the AA thing for about a year. I met a girl, fell head over heels in love. I left my job at Victoria's Secret, took another job that turned out to be just as corporate, but it wasn't, it wasn't as serious in a sense. I mean, in any job, there's always a boss that's going to want you to perform, and they're a boss. And it was a clothing store. I was managing the clothing store, and I was also making clothing similar to what I do now at a lesser volume and a lesser level. It wasn't as intricate as what I do now. So I lived this new life for a year with this girlfriend and this new job. She had just gotten signed to a record label at the time, and it was amazing. It was like really exciting, and this, that, and the other thing. And fast forward a year, I was actually at the store, and I was sitting in the back and, I don't know, eating breakfast when I just got there. And someone's like, "Hey, Christian, come in the back. Come out front. There's somebody that wants to speak to you." And I was like, "Dude, I got like 10 minutes. Like, give me a minute." Like, Donatella Versace is sitting out front. Yeah. So I go out front, and there's Donatella Versace holding, like cradling, like 3 jackets and like 10 shirts that I made by hand. And she looks at me and she goes, "Did you make these?" Like in this sweet accent, and 2 security guards standing there. And I was like, yeah, I made those. "Do you have any more?" I was like, I think so. Let me go check. And I go outside, or I go downstairs, and I get the rest. And I'm texting the owner, who was down the street. And I said, "Hey, Donatella Versace's here. Get over here." So he comes in. I said, "Oh, Donatella, I'd like to introduce you to the owner." No. I don't have time. I just want to talk to you. So everyone kind of left the room, and it was just me and Donatella Versace. And she grabs my hand and she goes, "You have a gift. Use it." And just walks away. And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy." And she spent $5,000 on all of this stuff. Next day I go in, I get called into the office, and the owner of the store goes, "What was that?" "What do you mean?" "Why don't you show her anything else? Why don't you show her around? Why don't this, that? Why don't you sell her more stuff?" And he was like one of those dudes,
Yeah.
I was like, "Dude, she didn't even want to meet you. What do you want me to do?" I didn't really do anything actually. And he goes, "Get out, you're fired." And I didn't believe him. I actually went back to work, and somebody was like, "Dude, you got to go. You're really fired." And I remember this day so vividly. It was right in December. It was blizzarding, not even just snowing. It was one of those sideways snow, and I'm standing in the middle of the street, just kind of what is going on? I was a year into my sobriety. I thought I had got my life together, Now, the girl that I met the year prior that I was dating was out in California finishing her record. And called her, and I wasn't able to get in touch with her. And I remember just standing in the street, and then she comes home a couple days later. Said, listen, my record's coming out. I'm not really going to have time for a relationship anymore. It just all came tumbling down. You know, this year of trying to fix my life just crashed within like a week. And this kind of, you know, is going to jump the gun into probably a future question, but what I did was I basically locked myself in my bedroom for 3 months and just kind of sat there and listened to music. And, you know, I know some people say it, it's kind of cliche and corny to say, but like, music was my only friend. Mm-hmm. And I have a quote now that's just which is the slogan for my company. It's called "Rock and Roll Saved My Soul." It's because that's what got me through that dark time. You know, I would just put on a record, and it was the first time in my life I would actually listen to the record. You know, from front to, you know, I mean, from lyrics to the sounds to everything, and then I would listen to these things over and over, and I would focus on a different part of the record. I mean, the drumming or the guitars and it took me out of my body. It became this outer body experience for me, and it just soothed me, you know. And you know how it is putting on a record. You disappear for a little bit, you know. In that moment, you are listening to a piece of art that somebody created, and that's what really got me back on my feet. Is this, you know, it was this music and this time off, and then I found, I said, I got to do something. You know, there's something inside of my body that needs to come out. I just don't know what it is. And I started to rediscover myself, rediscover New York City. And I would get up every day as if I had a job, get ready, and I would choose a neighborhood in New York and just walk around and just walk into stores or just look at things and just start talking to people. And I really learned about people, you know, and it's tough because, you know, it's going up to somebody being like, hey, man, how's your day going? People are like, especially in New York City, because it's like, yeah, you know,
it's different.
What do you want from me, you weirdo? But, and that led into me, you know, eventually starting this clothing thing. I fell in love, not necessarily the music, but I'm a big history nerd.
Mm-hmm. A lot of vinyl people are big history nerds.
And that's, yeah, I mean, gosh, I mean, and I go through phases of eras, I guess you can say. And it's not even the music, but it was the era, probably the late 70s, early 80s, but the punk movement in England. And like I mentioned earlier, Malcolm McLaren, Vivienne Westwood, this whole Sex Pistols. These people they're starting a movement. They're starting something that's just never been... I mean, it's been done in different proportions, but never like so in your face, like, this is who I am, and if you don't like it, I don't care. And they were customizing their clothing. They were, you know, taking their shirts and ripping the sleeves off, putting an anarchy patch, and they were standing up for who they were. And I was like, wow. And it was the first time I ever resonated with, like, a culture. It's like, I have to do this. This is something, you know, like, this is it. And that led into me painting my first leather jacket.
So, coming into your shop, you know, everything is very intentional. And I'm going to put some footage on my YouTube channel, just of kind of walking through. Everything is done so well, like you've done the white album covers on the white wall. I love that. And, you know, you even have the pillars with song lyrics on it. And I mean, this is, in this shop, it's just like, it's like a museum. Like, people, I laugh saying that, but, you know, we were sitting in here the other day when we first got into town, and probably had like 5 or 6 people come in. What is this place? What is this? This is a museum, you know, is this? And so, but yeah, all the guitars are art, you know, they all have, you know, different modifications to them and stuff. But, so when did you start getting into vinyl?
So it's kind of wild. Right before I was born, my mother worked in a record store.
Really?
And my father used to hang out there. I don't know. The thing is, I don't know. I never asked any more information about this, but I'm just gonna. I just know she worked at a record store, and he would hang out there. And at the end of the day, he would just like walk out with like a handful. So growing up, that were always in the house. And I always remember my father laying on the couch with this big spiral cord, these like huge headphones.
Yeah.
And this is back in the 80s, you know, and these big discs. And it was like so intriguing. He had, at least 1,000 records, all just in a room. And I grew up in my bedroom. I never had TV in my bedroom.
Kids have like everything now.
It's insane.
It's crazy.
It's insane. You know, and that's like why I don't get me started with modern civilization because
modern culture. Yeah.
It's just I had an imagination, you know, and I would go in and look at these 12 by 12 pieces of cardboard and just like, you know, I remember the smell, you know, like this like 70s smell, and I still can recreate that smell when I pick up an old record. So it's something that never intrigued me. I mean, like I said, I was a child in the 90s where CDs were the biggest thing in the world. I don't even think I ever saw a record at a store.
Yeah.
But there were so many record stores. I mean, like Sam Goody was everywhere, and just, you know, independent music stores, and they were everywhere where I grew up in New Jersey. So when I opened this shop up, I think around 5 years now, I needed things to fill. Surprisingly, there was nothing in here. And I went home for the holidays, and my dad kept his collection. He's just, you know, luckily, because you hear these horror stories. My wife threw away my collection. It's just like, But he kept his collection. And I said, Dad, you know, do you mind if I take a couple records for, like, decoration? He's like, yeah, take what you want. He goes, I actually have my old record player. Do you want to take that as well? I was like, yeah, why not? You know, like that'll probably look cool, like on a shelf or something. He's like, you could probably get it to work.
Right.
So I brought it back up, and we fixed it. We got it to work, and I put on the Stones' "Sticky Fingers," first record ever. This was my first experience.
Wow.
And I mean, it's 5 years ago, and I have never heard music like I've heard music that day.
Yeah.
On this, not necessarily. It was a decent player. It was like a Sony or something. You know, God knows how old the needle was, and it was probably nothing was lined. But I mean, it was just like
analog.
You know, what is this? And somebody was with me, and we were just sitting here like I was hearing things I'd never heard before. And we sat here, and I only had like 3 records. I was like Rod Stewart, Stones, and who knows what else, but we just kept listening to these 3 records over all day long. We didn't do any work. We just were like just so amazed by this whole thing. And I come here the next day, and I go to turn the record player on, dead. So I ran out. I like locked the door, closed the shop, and I went out and bought like just a cheap turntable. And I became obsessed with the fact of, for me it was the sound. I went and bought a just, you know, cheap turntable, like $200 turntable. And I bought like a portable, like those like Marshall MP3 player speakers.
Yeah.
And just plugged it right in. And it achieved what we needed to achieve. And then to me, it became a challenge. You know, music is just, it was a drug for me. You know, it's so nostalgic, you know. Like, I mean, the first thing I wanted to achieve was to get all of my teenage music on vinyl. Which is the hardest thing, getting 90s vinyl. Go figure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I was like, Luckily, since I started late in the game, a lot of these things were starting to be reissued. So I was able to kind of find everything. And it became such a part of my work. Then it became like a challenge to me. I was like, okay, I'm going to... And it's hard to sit down and think, like, man, what do I need? What do I need? You know, what do I need? And... to me, record shopping that's not how you should shop. What do I need? It's more of a discovery for me, which it eventually became. Mm-hmm. The beginning, it was, what do I need? You know, I made a mental list. You know, I need to get my basic grunge and the basic classics. You know, and then I would have everything covered. And little did I know the knowledge that would come with this.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, it's just... There was this record store over in the West Village. Unfortunately, they just closed, but they're called Rebel. Big Bowie fan. Mm-hmm. And it was this guy named Dave. And I walked in there and I said, hey, man, My name's Christian. I'm new to the game. And, I mean, from the first handshake, it was just like, welcome home. And I would go there and spend... I mean, this shop was... I mean, you could maybe fit 5 people comfortably in there. You know, just stacks of records.
Yeah.
So, he started to learn... I mean, and this goes back to, you know, talking with people. And the way he operated was, he learned his customers. And it got to a point where I would go in... I had my own box. It was called the Christian box. And he had a pile of records set aside for me. And he would just be like, I think you'd be into this. I think you'd be into that. And over a course of 6 months, I mean, I went from like 30 records to like 200. And it was all based off of what he thought I would like. And
that's how it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, that's and, you know, not to interrupt you, but we went to Generation Records last night, and I didn't catch the guy's name that was running it, but I was sitting there looking through records, and this is before he got there. This kid comes in, and him and his dad are like, hey, we found this turntable, and it's in, you know, in our attic or whatever, and we're having issues with it, and we don't know if it's aligned properly, but we really want to start listening to records. And the kid's like 10, and he's like, and we found an original Abbey Road in there. It's original, like old one. And then his dad's like, yeah, and we know it's probably worth a lot of money, so we don't want to risk it putting on this turntable and mess it up. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh gosh, here it comes. This guy's just gonna rain down snob on them, and he didn't. He was like so nice. He's like, oh boy, I know, you know. He like played it along. And he's like, yeah, some of those early ones can be worth a lot of money, and kind of gave them just really solid advice, like really good. And I was like, man, even in New York City,
yeah, because I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, there's some of these
store owners are jerks.
It's the community. I mean, it's like anything. I mean, and when you get deeper and deeper into things, you know, people can just have these egos about, you know, like that's not, you know. So
yeah, like the whole plural of vinyl is vinyl.
Right.
That's my
yeah.
pet,
I mean, people
that's
just,
my
you know,
peeve,
and
man, I hate that so much.
I mean, I don't mean to veer off, but I mean, people come into my shop all the time. They look at my setup and, you know, what kind of wires are you using? I'm just like, what? You know, and I
speaker, yeah.
You know, like what does that matter? I had one guy come in here recently, and I swear to God, I'm sitting here listening to a record, and hey, how's it going, man? You know, whatever. And I was like writing an email, and his first question to me, he gives me like the New York head nod. You conditioning your electricity? I was like, what are you talking about? So he's like, hey man, you know, you need to be conditioning your electricity. You know, you shouldn't be using. I was like, wait.
So do you shampoo it first?
Yeah, like, you know, like what? So I mean, in this world, it's a never-ending world. You know, like I know you mentioned to me earlier. It's like, you know, do you need why or?
I said, is there anything you don't like about your sound system? You're like,
I didn't know. I was like, what do you mean? And because it's never ending, you can constantly upgrade. You need to buy one thing, and then it's like these iPhones. You need to buy one, and then like the new one comes out, and this one's old all of a sudden.
Right. Well, we were sitting here the other day, and you know, you put on the Led Zeppelin 2 Mo-Fi, and that was mind-blowingly good.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So it's the bug I got. It's for me, it's the sound. I want to hear things. You know, I want to hear things the way they're supposed to be heard. You know, the closest we can get to what it came out of the recording studio. Mm-hmm. You know, and besides reel to reel, I think this is it. You know, and I mean, gosh, I remember when I first got my first expensive quote unquote record player. I put on "Wish You Were Here," and I was sitting here, and David Gilmour clears his throat. I got up and I looked in the back, like I thought somebody was in the room. I was like, what was that?
Yeah.
And I called my dad. I was like, Dad, do you know David Gilmour clears his... He's like, yeah, dude. Yeah. He clears his throat.
Of course he does.
I mean, and then I just played him, and I mean, you hear his fingers going up and down the fretboard.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, going back to what I was saying with the record store I would go to, it was a hobby that, like, I found it to be so universal. You know, music is... a drug, but it's the universal language. It's a universal drug. It's something you could put two polar opposite people into a room that don't even speak the same language, but they can bond over music.
Yeah.
And I would hang out in this record shop, and I was like a sponge and absorb everything. And they'd be like, oh, you like this? Then you're going to like this. And that's where the history came in. I mean, I went, obviously I knew the Stones, Zeppelin, Sabbath, what you're supposed to know. And then I knew my stuff from the 90s. And then all of a sudden I'm introduced to soul. I'm introduced to funk. I'm introduced to, just bands I'd never even imagined hearing. And then all of a sudden the blues. It's I don't even know where to begin with the blues. It was first I was like upset. I was like, oh my gosh, like this, like these guys are stealing this or what's going on here? Like what is this stuff? And it just opened up a whole new door for me.
Yeah.
And I made it almost like an obligation to discover as much as I can possible. And to go back to the history part of it, I mean, I went back to the roots in Africa when they were just doing drums. And I have some recordings of, just African drum beats, which eventually came to the States and, in the early birth of blues. I have recordings, like Alan Lomax recordings, when he was recording out of his trunk of these guys that, thankfully for these guys like Alan Lomax that would drive around and recording, that would never be heard. And it's the most beautiful stuff I've ever heard in my life. It's just this guy with a guitar. I mean, like, let's just say Robert Johnson, for instance, just sitting there with an untuned guitar that's probably broken and it's missing a string, God knows what, and just singing his heart out. Like, you feel what this man is going through. And I was just, it's just so amazing, and I don't record shop with a list. I record shop with an open mind and explore and discover.
Yeah.
And that's why, you've asked me this question. You're like, how often are you out there record shopping? And I'm out there like 3 days a week because I just I'm surrounded by just art in a sense. I mean, it's just this, it's a feeling for me.
Now you're into what? Like hard rock?
Doom? That's the hardest question in the world that anyone could ever ask me. What are you into? It really depends what I'm into that week or that day.
Mm-hmm.
A typical day for me here is to come into the shop, put on a record, and create. And it's literally, there's no rhyme or reason of like why I'm listening to a certain record. It's just something, I start like kind of just fidgeting through, and kind of like you, the way these records are organized, it's organized to me. Like if an average person were to come in here, they're just like, what is your method here? But I know where everything is, and I just, oh wow, this record, and like we were just doing before, you look through your records, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I had this.
Yeah.
And I go into like phases,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's 70s, just your classic rock, or even 80s new wave. You just mentioned, sometimes 90s hip hop, if not, and it's all depending, on the day and how I'm feeling, and I put records on, I'm like, I don't feel like listening to this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So for me, like for the longest time, like especially when I first got started buying collections, every collection kind of had a flavor to it, and a lot of it was new to me, and so I would be into, like, I'd get a collection of punk, and I'll be into that for a while, and I would listen to all that stuff before I sold it. I'm gonna get a collection of blues. Blues had a big impact on me too. When I first heard it, man, I found I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but I was dumpster diving. There's this record store out kind of close to where I lived, and the guy would throw away tons of records in the dumpster, like every day. Oof. And but it was all stuff he didn't think was worth money, or he didn't think would sell, or whatever. And this one was a Muddy Waters album. It's kind of rare. You don't see it very much, but it's Luther George the Snake Boy Johnson and the Muddy Waters Blues Band.
Wow.
And it's,
what a name.
It's kind of hard to remember, But anyways, like 1968, 69, something like that. It's on Douglas Records, and I found a copy of that in the garbage. It didn't have a cover; it was just the record.
Right.
It wasn't in any sort of sleeve, and so I took it home. It just looked, and the label looked cool, and I'd heard of Muddy Waters before, but I'd never heard him. And like I was like 13 at this point, and I put it on, and like my mind was blown. Like I'd never heard so much emotion and soul into something like. And it sounded like in my head I envisioned it being like a really small bar with a really small stage and this blues band up there, and there's a song called "Long Distance Call." I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but it's an old blues song, and in Muddy Waters he goes, I went home and I went to see my wife and I pulled my keys out and I unlocked the door and I walked in the door and she said, "Muddy, there's another mule kicking in your stall," and like just like he tells a story like unbelievable. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I met this guy that played blues guitar, and he was really good at it, and he taught me how to play blues. And that was like, that changed everything.
It's insane how, it's... Yeah.
And then you realize, like, I liked rock and roll before, but now I understand it. Like,
that's what it is, And it's such a... It's like somehow I skipped over where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
And then rediscovering where it came from. It's just like...
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny the difference between like Led Zeppelin. Everyone says they ripped off all these blues guys, and I always joke that my favorite member of Led Zeppelin is Willie Dixon. But
sure.
But I think the Stones did it right.
They did it right.
They really paid respect to their influences.
I actually I had a conversation. I met Keith Richards. We were at Electric Lady Studios.
Wow.
We started talking, and I said we were talking about Muddy Waters, and I said, Keith, blues is a big inspiration, man. Like, is that how you really, started the Stones? And he's just like, listen, we were in England, and we weren't getting American records at all. Like they were a lot of folk records, especially, you could see, Zeppelin, the inspiration of folk. And he said, we would get these records, and somebody would have, an Otis Rush or whatever, and everybody would just run to this person's house and listen to it. And he said, when he first heard Muddy, he said, "I'm starting a band. I need to recreate this music." And at this time, it was Brian Jones, and played for Brian Jones, and they had just formed the Stones, and they said it was going to be the first TV performance. You can actually, you can YouTube it. They said, we're going to do a cover of Little Red Rooster. And they went on, and this was, the mid to late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And they went on TV, and it was just like your typical 60s, screaming girls, and like the announcer, and, I'd like to introduce this new band, the Rolling Stones. And all of a sudden, Brian Jones just does the slide part in Little Red Rooster. And what they did is they sped it up.
Yeah.
And that's how they became so well known off of somebody else's song. They paid such homage to it. I mean, gosh, they did a record together at the Checkerboard Lounge.
Mm-hmm.
They let people know, and then they introduced, and they, it was such a part of their upbringing.
Like I've seen some videos of them going on TV with Howlin' Wolf.
Yep.
And they did not hide the fact that these guys wrote these songs. And that didn't take away from them doing it, their own way.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Even Zeppelin, everyone's Zeppelin one's a cover album. But, it's because they didn't give credit. Sure, I understand you can debate that all day long. But, they turned it into their own.
Yeah. There was nothing like, when you put that record on, I remember the first time I heard it, it blew my mind. It doesn't matter if you know blues, or you like blues, or you don't like blues, or you've heard all the songs before. It's just killer, man.
So one big thing I like to do at night is I have to listen to music, and I have a little I still have that Marshall speaker next to my bed, and yes, I do stream it, and
that's fine. Listen, it's okay.
We'll get over it, but it's kind of funny because some of the records I listen to fall asleep, people are like Black Sabbath, a lot of hard rock, and what I like to do is, and it puts me at ease and it clears my head from the day, is I lay down and close my eyes. I either pretend I'm there, and I also like to pretend I'm hearing this record for the first time when it came out. And I try to imagine myself in that time period. Like, could you just imagine, like, in 1969 getting Led Zeppelin 1, putting it on and hearing it for the first time?
Yeah.
Like, something like that. Just, I mean, it's been done to an extent in a different way between, we have, the British invasion, as so to speak. But just, like, could you imagine?
Yeah.
And I put myself into that spectrum. And another big thing is I like to hone in on, like I said earlier, different parts. I mean, I there's times I'll just listen to John Bonham playing drums, the whole record. I won't even pay attention to anything else because it's just so fascinating. And I mean, music, the way it was recorded back then, was just so real.
When I was a kid, I was at Goodwill. I was looking through records, and there's this guy standing behind me, and he's like, "Don't take all the good records, kid. I'm looking for some Led Zeppelin." And I'm like, "Oh, like crap, I'm looking for Led Zeppelin too." And I was looking through, and he was standing behind me, and he goes, and I flipped past Presents because I didn't know what it was, because you wouldn't know. And he goes, "Oh!" And then I realized, because he saw it, and I realized that's what that was. And so I would have never known he would have gotten it, but he told me the story about, he's like, "I remember the first time I heard Led Zeppelin, I was driving down the road and I turned on the radio. It was a Whole Lot of Love, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And the song was over, and it just blew my mind. And the windows were rolled down, and I stopped at a stoplight, and there's a house right over to my right, and they were playing Whole Lot of Love at the house. And I couldn't believe that I just heard on the radio." And so I pulled on the side of the street, I parked my car in the road, and I walked right in their living room, and they're like, "Can you believe this record?" Yeah. And we sat and listened to the whole thing. I didn't even know this guy, and like,
it's
that's like
wild,
such a crazy story.
Yeah,
that I wish I had been able to spend some time like that back then. But I mean, it's just now. I mean, I know you say you don't want to get into it, but the whole instant gratification culture, the kids don't get it. They don't.
Right.
And when I had a taste of it when I was younger. There was no smartphones or anything like that. There was no internet. I remember when I was a kid, there wasn't internet until I was a teenager. But it's cool to hear stories like that and to, imagine what it would have been like.
Well, the cool thing is now, though. I mean, the reason why I've gravitated to you, it just goes back to history again. I could just use this word history all the time because you've introduced so much. What you're doing for the community is it's unbelievable because, I mean, the music world is just endless. I don't think anybody in the world will ever hear everything ever recorded. And it's inspired me to, to have this location and have 3,000 records in here and educate, whether it's, I had somebody come in here once, and she was looking around, and I was listening to something, and I just put a Stones record on, and she, "What's this?" And at first I was just kind of like so amazed. I'm like, "What is this?" I was like, "Oh, it's the Rolling Stones." She's like, "Oh, are they new?" Yeah. And your initial reaction, is to be
get
like,
out of here,
But then I was like, wait a minute. She legitimately doesn't know, and I just said, "Wow, you never heard of the Rolling Stones?" And and it was one of those moments where I could have went either way.
Right.
She was into this modern whatever the hell's going on now, and I said, "You know what? I'm gonna give you this.
Yeah.
I want you to take this. She said, "I don't have a record player. I just want you to take this record," and it was Exile.
Oh
on
wow,
Main Street.
Oh gosh.
And so just put it on your shelf. Look at it. Look at the pictures. Just read about it.
Yeah.
There's just look at it. And if you get a record player one day, just put it on.
Right.
And just maybe you'll one day I think you'll look back and be like, "Wow, this is pretty cool."
Yeah.
And that's instead of being like a snob about it and be like, "Oh, she doesn't know what she's doing," and which we find in this community a lot. There's a lot of people just like, "Oh, you've never heard of this band," and it's just like,
oh yeah,
I
can't tell you
I
how many
haven't.
times I've done that. Just been like, just take it. I have a friend that he was over at my house and he's like, "What's this record?" It was Cactus, and I was like, "Just take it." It's Cactus.
Of course.
Right? I said, "Just take it," and he's like, okay, and he took it home, and he, like, the other day he was like, that is one of my favorite records, and I would have never.
That's the best part of it.
Yeah, and I just love, because you could go, like you said, you could go either way, but if you think of it like I could be the person in this person's life that they remember this moment.
Sure.
As that's something that they were introduced to something versus remembering this moment of how this guy was a jerk.
Of course, and it's, I mean, that's definitely now in this, because I'm in a position now, where I've built my career, and I hate to say this, and I hate to say these words, but I'm in some sort of spotlight, and people are, I'm under a magnifying glass as far as people looking at every move, between my social media and this and that. People are watching, and people come into this shop, or even if somebody comes up to me on the street or this or that knows of what I do, I have to think to myself, wow, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
That this person knows who I am. I don't know who they are, but they know who I am for what I do, and I can change that person's whole perspective about me in 2 seconds. And it stems back to like the whole interaction of people, and you just leave a little impact on someone.
Oh yeah. When I was thinking about this earlier, that when we were talking about Muddy Waters over there, I was thinking of about when I found that record, and I listened to it over and over again. And I, like, a couple months later, I went back into that same shop, and I said, I found this record in your dumpster. Do you have any more Muddy Waters? Did it come in? And there's two old guys that always hang out there. The guy's freaking old. He still looks is just as old as he did then. I don't know. He still works there. I still go there all the time. But his friend said, we don't have any more Muddy Waters, but we have some McKinley Morganfield. And I'm like, who thinks that? That's Muddy Waters' real name. And I was like, I don't know who that is. I want some Muddy Waters. And they were making fun of me the whole time. Yeah. And I didn't know. I had no idea.
Right.
And I'm like, I want Muddy Waters. And the whole time I was so humiliated when I walked out of there. Because I didn't, I'm some 13-year-old kid,
sure,
and I'm wanting more of something. Like, that's such a good thing.
You would think.
But yeah, like for me, kids come into my pop-ups all the time, and like I'll have, like I used to have, I don't do this much anymore, but I would have a turntable going, just because it's a lot to carry around. But sure. I have a turntable and a PA, and every single record I put on, some kid would say, "What is this?" Doesn't matter what it is, and I would say, "This is Bob Dylan." They would say, "I want that," and I would sell the record before it got done playing,
right?
Because like they're hungry for it, and it's real, and I think that's
a cool thing, though. I mean, I go through many phases, and more times than less, of getting really upset about pop culture today. And what's in the mainstream compared to what was in the mainstream, and I look at the bright side and I say, this stuff it's there. Rock and roll is there. This music will always be there. It's just a matter of time, and just be patient. And like you said, there's kids that are hungry for it. I mean, remember that, growing up there was the goth kids, and then there was the punk kids, and there was these, and they were afraid to be themselves because they didn't want to get made fun of. And that's, I feel like, what's going on today. And now, unfortunately, it's like these kids that just like straight up just rock and roll are afraid to be themselves.
Yeah.
And there's bands, and there's a lot of bands out there today that are playing some really good rock and roll.
Yeah.
And I've seen it firsthand. I've seen, young bands, and I've seen a young fan base, and it's an amazing sight to see because they're enjoying it, and it's inspiring them to pick up instruments and start a band and discover old bands, and they're going to go through the same cycle we did of discovering.
Yeah. Have you seen that documentary, A Band Called Death?
Yes.
Oh
yes.
That's a really good one. In summation, this kid finds this 45, it's his dad's band, and that he never knew about. And now, I don't know if you know this, but now his kid has formed a band and plays those songs. And
wow, I didn't know that. No,
I can't remember the name of the band. But it's not the name because Death got back together. They lost one of their like the main guy, but they got back together and did stuff. But that's such a cool story. If you haven't seen that and you're watching or listening to this, the documentary's called A Band Called Death.
Yeah, there's a soundtrack for that too.
Yeah, it's that they found the original tapes and they reissued or issued for the first time that record on vinyl.
Right.
It is absolutely killer. But anyways, but yeah, I think I'm encouraged by some kids and I'm discouraged by others.
Yeah, I mean, there's
but,
you can't win everyone over, but
yeah,
it's a good feeling, and it's kind of like giving back. You know what I mean? I mean, this stuff is just, I can't say it enough. It's just so, it unites.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, like when I'm doing my events or whatever, and this is one of the reasons I really want to start a shop, is I'll see kids that are 12, 13 years old that are talking music with these like 60-year-olds that they're like, I remember when this came out, and the kid's like, no way, that's really cool, And so it is something that is universal, and
right.
No matter what era someone grew up in. I mean, I like the same music as a lot of like 80-year-old dudes, Like I like jazz and blues and stuff that's that old, and that's something that we can, have in common and talk about, and like it's just like you said, it's
we're in a really lucky time now. I mean, the vinyl resurgence is like, what did they do? Like, I heard the statistic. They did like 1.4 billion in record sales.
Yeah, record sales this year is the first year that records outsold CDs since like
and I think like online streaming too.
Yeah,
it's just so readily available. I mean, they're bringing I mean, sometimes too a little overboard. Like, how many times are they gonna release the same record, on different variants, this, that, and the other, but it's available now, as opposed to, gosh, I mean, 90s into the early 2000s when, I mean, I didn't even know what a vinyl record was, like, as far as, like, physically buying one and playing one.
Yeah. Well, I remember being 15 years old and talking to my friend, like, man, I remember having this conversation. I was like, I wish there were record stores, because there were none. There might have been one in the area, but I didn't know about it. We don't have, a cell phone, so I couldn't look it up. And I was like, man, I wish there was a record store that sold like new records, because I couldn't find them anywhere. And I remember saying, when I'm older, I'm going to start a record store and I'm going to sell records.
It's wild.
And now I am, but it's so cool that it's so available now. And like people ask, when is it going to go back out? And I don't think it will.
Really? That's a question?
People ask me that every single day. They say, well, like the lady that, well, I won't say that, but like, my dad, for instance, he said, well, when the vinyl craze has gone, I think he thinks that when the vinyl stops, then CDs are going to start again. And a lot of people think that, and that's not true, because CDs suck. And CDs, basically, they don't hold up as well as records do. Like, some of them are starting to corrode. Some of the earlier CDs are starting to corrode. And so I don't think they'll come back for that reason. But anyways, but now, like, and my reasoning behind it, what I tell people is, in the 70s and 80s and even 60s, you had two types of people. You still have this now. One type bought records because that was the only way they could listen to music.
Sure.
And that was just how you did it. There was no alternative. And then the second type was the people that would collect records for their recordings and say, well, I've got the first pressing of this. But there were not a whole lot of people like that. There were not a lot of crazy record collectors. But now there are way easier ways to listen to music. They're buying records because they sound better, and they're buying records as a form of collecting. And when there's someone who's a collector, sure, some people collect because it's a fad.
Sure.
But then some people are lifelong collectors. Like, I mean, from the first time I picked up a record, I've never stopped. I mean, from when I was a little kid.
Well, that's it. Do you consider yourself, like, are you, like, I need the first pressing on this label, or like, this is a sealed copy, I'm never going to open it, it's going to be worth.
Yeah.
Like, are you in it for that? Or?
I don't have any sealed records, and I won't, because if it's sealed and it's worth so much that I won't open it, I'm just going to sell it. Because if I can't listen to something, I'm not. And there's some people that collect it. For me, it's worthless if I can't listen to it. So I'm either going to open it or I'm going to sell it. So for me, as far as like the first pressing, all this, that, it's a case-by-case deal. Like, when I kind of started, it was nice to have not necessarily a first press, but like an older one. But for different albums, it's different things. Like, for me right now, I would trade all my Led Zeppelin albums for the classic records pressings, because they sound so good.
Yeah.
I don't care how early the U.S. pressing. For me, early U.S. pressing of Led Zeppelin's not that appealing because they weren't from the U.S. So a first UK would be cool. Like, I've got Plum label first UKs of the first 5, which is cool. But I'm a fanatic about Led Zeppelin. So when it comes to like Pink Floyd, I just look for the best sounding copies if I can. But then that's just with like those type of records. When it comes to like jazz, it's really cool to have original pressings.
I'm just now getting into labels.
The labels is where it's at for me. When it comes to psych, a lot of that stuff you can only get the original pressings.
Right.
But then like there's new issues. For psych, that's such a historical thing for me too, because a lot of these guys that were in these psych bands, they were not rock and roll stars. Right. They did not make a lot of money, or maybe even any money, and they're just regular people now. That's so cool to me. Like,
well, that's like the story you were talking about, the record, or the guy you've interviewed in the past. Like, he never intended. Nobody wanted to pick up his music, and it's just like it's this incredible. Yeah. And that's another thing too. I mean, it's mind-boggling how many bands there came out of 60s, 70s. It's never ending. I mean, someone that I showed you my list. I have like 30 bands of what you've spoken about on your channel, of what I'm constantly on the hunt for. And I mean, that's just like the tip of the iceberg compared to what's out there. Yeah, there's so much. I mean, I've been like learning about and collecting psych for like 5 years now. And there's guys that have been doing it for 20, and they still are learning stuff. Then they've been doing it that long, right? So it's never ending. And like some kids, they'll like this one kid saw a clip of me listening to. There's an album called "Women and Children First" by Ancient Greece, and it's like killer psych fuzz rock, like crazy guitar solos. And this kid was like, what the heck is this? And he sent me a message, and I was like, and I told him the name of the album. He's like, this is incredible. And he like went and found a copy of it, and I was like, man, I really wish that when I was 15 someone would have told me what this album was or whatever. So kids now are really blessed with having endless resources. Like, I mean, that's why we got to look at the positive, there's the YouTube channels, and there's the internet, this, that, because the only way we discovered was going to record stores,
or like going to the library and reading a freaking book, like.
And I grew up with the local indie radio station, so it was the popular bands. They would occasionally play something a little obscure, but I mean, it was just from from Pixies to Radiohead,
oh wow,
that. Yeah. And then, I had no idea if it wasn't for my father, I came home from college my first year, and I'll never forget this, and he hands me Dark Side of the Moon, and he goes like this. My dad's the greatest dude in the world, and he's like the king of dad jokes, and just like you don't know when to take him serious or not. You're just like. But he literally hands me. It was a CD at the time, and Dark Side, and he goes, "I think it's time you're ready for this."
Finally,
I was just like, "What is it?" I'm ready for this, and. I mean, I don't need to get into what that feeling is, because we as Floyd fans, everyone, you know what that is. Yeah. But now it's like the people that are keeping this community afloat and talking about it. It's inspiring, and like you probably don't even know half of the people you're reaching.
I have no idea. I'll go into record stores sometimes out of state somewhere, and somebody will be like, I watched your channel and I just discovered this album. Like, that's like crazy.
It's like you're doing it's a communal service or something,
It's fun for me.
And it's just a passion. And that's the wild thing about it. To turn a passion into like a career is just, it's beautiful.
Going back to Dark Side, when I was in high school, someone told me, I worked at Guitar Center, and someone came in and we were listening to Dark Side, and they were like, you can put that with Wizard of Oz.
Yes, and the third line.
No freaking way. And they're like, yeah, try it. And I went home and did it, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Insane.
And my sister had this Wizard of Oz VHS, and I put it in there and I queued it up and I watched it, and my mind was blown. And so I took our downstairs VCR, and I plugged it in, and I just plugged the video in, and then I ran the audio from my receiver into the audio, and then I recorded it as the audio from Pink Floyd and then Wizard of Oz. And then I took it to school, and I showed my friend. I was like, you got to watch this. And he's like, how much you want for this tape? And I was like, $10. And so he paid me $10. And so all these other people, I was like, I sold like 100
You're
of
making
them.
tapes. That's amazing.
And I sold like 100 of them. And do you think they meant to do that?
I was gonna say, I wonder, like,
I don't know, man.
I wonder, like, they've never. I wonder, have they ever like publicly come out and said, yeah, all right, we, you know, well, the movie, that movie came out in, gosh, 39, 40, or whatever the hell it was. And
my mom called me 2 or 3 years ago, and she said there's somebody at our house, and they said they went to high school with you, and they're wanting to know if you can make them a tape of Dark Side of the Moon.
Get out of here.
I mean, it's been 10 years, you know, at least,
Yeah.
and I was like, that's freaking crazy.
you're the man to go to.
Yeah, I'm the Dark Side guy, and I was like, I actually think I have a box of them somewhere. But anyways, yeah, I don't know. You know, it's either like crazy coincidence. Or
I think that would be my first question if I ever ran into like Roger Waters. Like I wouldn't talk about anything else. Just
did you guys mean to do that? I mean, I'm sure he gets that question.
Yeah, of course,
all the time. I mean,
of course.
But I don't know the answer.
Well, it's the same with everything else. You know, I mean, how many times, you know, with the whole hidden messages and the playing backwards.
Backward masking. That was a big part. So funny thing, the first time I heard Led Zeppelin, and if those listen to my podcast, I'll talk about this more in the first episode. But my dad, he brought me a cassette tape of Led Zeppelin 4, and to where it was Stairway to Heaven, but it was the part where it played it forward and then it played it backwards.
Weird.
Where it talked about like, because there's one part that says I will sing because I live with Satan.
Yeah.
And then there's like all these satanic messages in there. They're not intentional.
Sure.
I don't think. But anyways, and so he let me hear it, and I was like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, it's,
so he was
you
like,
know,
you need to watch out for this music.
they did such a good job. I just did a Zeppelin jacket for a client.
Yeah.
And I called you. I even called you because it was probably the hardest piece I've ever had to work with. Zeppelin really kept an amazing, mysterious image.
Yeah. That's what was so intriguing. You're like, what is with these guys?
You know,
what's with that presence thing? Like what?
Yes.
You know.
And, you know, I was just searching, and I thought I knew what I needed to know about Zeppelin. I'm just like, I don't even know what to
put on.
To put on this jacket. I mean, like obviously the symbols, and you know, there's the blimp, this, that, and the other. But like, what do I put on this jacket? A picture of Aleister Crowley, like, you know, I can get deep if you want,
Yeah.
but it was tough, but that's the cool thing, and that goes back to, you know, bands back then. Like, you didn't know what these guys look like, and you don't know where they're from, and like, I mean, could you imagine hearing Sabbath for the first time? You must think these guys are like these demons. You know, Sabbath 1 with that first song, you're just like, what is this?
Oh my
you know,
gosh,
and
it's so good.
And it's funny because I'm such a Sabbath fan, and you know, you listen to interviews, and they had nothing to do with Satanism. They did nothing, and it was Geezer Butler, who was just a big horror movie buff. And across the street where they were rehearsing was a movie theater, and they would go see the Black Sabbath movie, and
I don't know anything about that.
And that's where the name came from.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And
what were they called before that? They had like another really weird name.
Good question. I know.
Dang it.
They were called something else, but then Black Sabbath sounded, and all of the lyrics. It was just Geezer Butler was just this amazing writer, and he would just take these horror movies and just kind of combine them into lyrics. Ozzy eventually he had something to do with the writing, but he was just handed the sheet. Ozzy was a genius because he knew how to take those lyrics and turn them into a song. Like, I have some recordings. Actually, they did a great campaign. I think it was like 2014. They reissued the first 3 or 4 Sabbath albums, and first I think it's would have been the NEMS label. And the first record is the actual album. Then there's the outtakes. So there's songs, and it's just Ozzy making things up. He's humming, or he's like kind of just making words up, and it's so incredible to hear that. That's probably my favorite part.
I've got one of the Zeppelin boots. That's Led Zeppelin 3, but someone got a hold. I mean, I know someone robbed Jimmy Page's house and stole a bunch of his tapes at one point, but someone got a hold of Led Zeppelin 3 like rough drafts, and it was basically them sitting in a room, and Bronny R, I don't know how you say that, but you know, where they went to that little village to write Led Zeppelin 3, and Robert Plant's like, and like trying to stumble through Immigrant Song, and the lyrics are totally different. Like, that's really cool to hear.
I think
like,
that's that's also another I'm a huge fan of the outtakes, and
Yeah.
I love to learn how these songs came about.
Yeah.
For instance, I don't know if you heard this. Did you hear the story about Radiohead recently?
I don't think so.
Somebody hacked. So Tom York, singer of Radiohead, kept everything on these little like mini discs, and he had them all on his computer, whatever. And some dude in London went in and hacked and somehow got a hold of these tapes, and it was the OK Computer era.
Oh my gosh!
And I think it was like 18 hours worth of
No way.
of music. And he wrote.
They're gonna put that on 18 LP.
So
box set.
you would think, but no. So this guy wrote like a ransom note to Radiohead and said, "I want X amount of money, or I'm releasing this." So Radiohead said, "Are you like okay, dude?" So Radiohead went on the next day on, I think it was like a Bandcamp or some kind of website, and said, "Here is all of that material for 21 euros, and all of that money is donated to charity. So you can go online and listen to it, and you can buy it for $20."
I'll ask you this. So what you do, a lot of people dream. Like I have a lot of really good friends that are like, man, it's amazing that you get to do stuff with music every day, and it seems like you have exactly what you want. Like you're doing exactly what you want to do. Have you ever, this is a weird question I know, but have you ever got to a point where you just want to quit?
Every day.
I love your Instagrams that talk about like the people that send you messages and they're like, can you please if you give me a free jacket, I'll post high res photos and you get followers for my followers.
It's
my favorite.
I mean, at
your
least
responses are my favorite.
15,
thing.
and I think as I get them, as I repost them, I get them. I got one the next day. I was like,
you'd be surprised how often I get people say, "Hey, listen, I'm new to collecting, and you have so many records. It wouldn't hurt you just to send me some for free." I get that every single day, and my wife is
it's
like,
entitlement.
outraged.
It's entitlement, man. You know what I mean? It's just all of a sudden, if you can come up with a high res image and good content, which isn't hard to do, and the way you portray this, you gain a following, and then all of a sudden you're famous. That's just how this works now. Like these kids are just like, I'm famous now, and they're just doing absolutely ridiculous things, and they're almost like they're putting on this facade, and it's killing like just human interactions now. Like they're like, just be yourself. Like you don't stop trying to portray this image that's unachievable.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, like I was telling you this the other day, a lot of people are like, man, you would get a lot more followers if you lost your accent. And I'm like, what? No. I don't like...
Wow.
I can't... No, first of all, I can't.
Well, yeah.
I mean, unless I like changed over totally to like a British accent or something, which I could do. I wish for some reason people find a lot more appealing than a Southern accent, but I won't get to that. But anyways, but I think a lot more people are like they're drawn to you if you just can be yourself, because
it's honesty.
It makes them feel like they can be themselves.
It's honesty, I mean, I feel it's my obligation to tell my story.
Yeah.
I started from the bottom. I hit rock bottom.
Well, I'm sure you hear people say you're so lucky that you get to have this amazing shop and do what you do, and you're like, am I lucky or did I really work my butt off?
I'm exhausted, and I need people to know that, and I can't put on a facade. Sure, I'm working with these amazing rock stars and this, that, and the other, and I don't want people to think that's my life 24/7. That's like 10% of my life. Sure, these are great people in my life, and I can go to them and talk to them about just life in general. But the other 90% is me stressing and trying to get through this game that we all have to get through.
Yeah, Christian invited me to come hang out with him in Aerosmith last month in with Atlantic City or whatever.
Yep.
It was very hard to say no. I was very tempted to go hang out with and party with you in Aerosmith, but I just couldn't. I got this shop I'm trying to get up and running. I just couldn't. But that was very tempting.
Well, we have next month. We have November, and then...
Oh, gosh. I can't do that.
I'll drag you out there.
Yeah. Well, maybe, I mean, hey, if you can secure a podcast between me and Steve and Tyler...
Done.
I will probably do it. I'm not joking. That'd be a dream. But, like, when I was, like, 12, and first time I heard Aerosmith, like, really intentionally listened to it, I went into this, like, head shop that was in downtown Concord, which is kind of remote town. And it was a weird place to have this head shop. It was a head shop, and I'm sure they just sold weed out of there and didn't make money on the merchandise. But they had this killer Aerosmith shirt. It was a Get a Grip cover, and with the udders and the piercing and all that stuff. And I bought it, and literally when I walked out, I took my shirt off and put that on, and I wore it for the rest of my life. I'm wearing it under this right now. No, but my mom got it, and she was like, she saw it, she was outraged. She's like, what the crap? What is this garbage? This is perverted, this is nasty. And I was like, come on, Mom. And I'll never forget my mom. And if you're listening to this, Mom, I'm sorry. I'm not accusing you. My mom is the greatest lady in the world. But all my band t-shirts, she hated them. And I had like a ton. And they're all black, and she hated it. So one day, we don't know what happened, but she did the laundry, and just happened to be my load. She had poured bleach in.
Does he say bleach?
And they look like those shirts right there. And they look freaking gnarly. And it totally backfired on her. So I had like an Abbey Road one that was black. I had that one. So I still have that Aerosmith one somewhere. But and they all look freaking gnarly.
Those were our shields, man. Those shirts are like what we represent.
Oh yeah. And it was like I don't know why it was so important to me at the time, but like it was cool when I could go into high school and people could like say, "Oh man, you like that band too?" And since it wasn't popular at the time, for another person to even know what Led Zeppelin was, because I grew up, everybody was listening to the popular hip hop and pop and whatever crap was on the radio, and for them to like really like something, like I had a BB King shirt that like people would be like, occasionally somebody would be like, "Oh, I love BB King," and then that would give me something.
It's like a bond,
yeah. So now it's funny looking back at some of the shirts I had, but I had to buy like a bunch of Beatles shirts and stuff like that. But anyways, we're running out of time, and we're running out of batteries, and it's late. And there's apparently some sort of war going on outside with helicopters and trains fighting each other.
Welcome to New York.
Godzilla. So, but anyways, man, thank you so much for sitting down and talking. And it's been a blast checking out your shop. And
it's wild how, friendships can happen through just the love of music. And, from two totally different backgrounds. And here we are sitting on the same couch now.
Yeah, it's been cool, man. Like being able to see kind of your life and what you do and how music impacts you and what records kind of get you excited. I remember earlier on, I got 6 of those band Guns N' Roses covers, and they're all promos. And I texted you and asked you if you want one. You're like, I think I already have one, but I'll text Slash and see if he needs one. And I'm like, just tell him to call me. Yeah, but anyways, that's cool, man. Well, it's been real. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Thanks, brother. Have to piss.